Welcome to Still City Mukbang Variety Pod. This is the first episode of hopefully many to come. I've been thinking about starting this podcast for a while now, and we're finally kicking it off today. My name is Tara Molina, and I am your host and creator. You may call me T-Rex, that is T-E-E-R-E-X. I want to welcome everyone to this first episode, and I'd like to say a special thank you to my followers and supporters from TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. This is a new journey, and I am looking forward to every minute of it. So, with that said, let's get started with today's topic, which is a very touchy subject: addiction. Many of you know from my TikTok page that my son had been hospitalized for 2 months. I spent a lot of time going back and forth, making sure that he was okay, making sure that he had everything he needed, and basically praying and making sure that he was supported in every way possible. He requested not to reveal the cause of his illness at that time, and I abided by his wishes and did not talk about the root cause of his illness. My son is charming, charismatic, intelligent. He is also manipulative, persuasive, deceiving, and a liar. It's hard to admit this when it is your child. I've decided to talk about this because of so many families that are suffering through the same thing that my family is suffering through. My son has been an addict for all of his adult life. And it is not easy. It is not an easy thing to admit this or talk about. But in my opinion, hiding an addiction only perpetuates it. The more people that know about it, the more you may want to seek help. It can be embarrassing. It is embarrassing. I just want to give you a brief rundown of how it started 2.5 months ago. Receiving a phone call from my son from the hospital. Barely able to breathe, very short of breath, very scared, barely able to talk above a whisper, and he was in extreme pain. The first thing I asked him when he told me his situation was this drug related? And he said, probably. I immediately talked to a nurse who told me that his condition was very critical and he had used a needle to inject not one, but a 5-drug cocktail into his body. The needle turned out to be tainted and dirty. What he did was not only inject drugs into his body, he injected not one, but 2 bacteria, sepsis and MRSA. The bacteria traveled to his heart and lungs. He developed necrotic pneumonia and endocarditis, which is a bacteria of the heart, which causes your heart valve to vegetate and spread the bacteria as it pumps through your body. So the bacteria just recycles itself over and over again throughout your body. It could end up poisoning any part of your system. The options that he was given were to try antibiotics, very strong ones, IV ones, and also possibly open heart surgery. to replace the valves in his heart. They started him out on a cocktail of antibiotics for the first week that did not work because of MRSA. MRSA is methicillin resistant staph aureus, meaning that bacteria resists most antibiotics. It is very hard to find a combination of antibiotics that will kill that bacteria. So the first week, he was on a series of antibiotics that did not start to reverse the situation. His infectious disease doctor then came up with another antibiotic cocktail that was able to start to reverse the symptoms. His pneumonia cleared up and the infection started to subside. It was a long process. We're talking 6 to 8 weeks of antibiotic treatment. That's the story with him. The addiction part of it. The whole time he was in the hospital, I was worried that when he got out, he was going to go right back because that was his MO. Over the years, decades of this abuse cycle, my main concern and fear was that if he pulled through, he would end up right back in the street. I begged him profusely and prayed and prayed and prayed over him while he was in the hospital that he would go into rehab after leaving the hospital. He is the type of person that when he is around people that influence him, he seems to have no control. And that's the cycle of addiction, where when you're down and you're sick from drug use, you're telling yourself and everyone around you, it is never going to happen again. I've learned my lesson. I'll never touch another drug. But that's because you're incapacitated and virtually on lockdown in a hospital, tied to an IV antibiotic machine pump. And I knew, because I know my son, I was worried when he got out that he would go right back, regardless of it being a situation that could kill him the next time. My son has been Narcaned more than I can count, more times than I can count. Only by the grace of God is he still with us after how many overdoses that he has suffered. And I just kept with that theme for him that if you're still here after all of this, that you have some purpose in life. You have got to get yourself on track. And if you would, please listen to me this time. Please go into rehab when you get out of the hospital. I was willing to research the rehabs, set him up with one that could help him get on the right track, help him find a job, help him get sufficient housing. And he flat out refused it, saying that he was strong enough. He was never going to let anything like this happen again because this particular situation scared him to death. I knew better. I know his weakness. We even got into a major argument while he was in the hospital about his addictive behavior and how he needed some type of help and guidance from a professional to help him get through it. He declined. He said that he was going to stay in a town that was not near the drug users that he was so used to palling around with. We talked about how none of these people were his friends because not one of them came to see him during this time. Not one of them called. So when he got out of the hospital, he agreed to stay with an ex with his children in another state. First, before that, I told him he should come and stay with me for a couple of weeks just to have that transition from the hospital back into society. A society where he is definitely going to find drugs easily. He agreed to that. He came and stayed with me for 2 weeks, and I helped him get on track to take his medication on time. Just basically making sure that his mind was ready, although I knew he needed more help than that. The time came for his follow-up appointment after being discharged from the hospital. I took him back to the town that he was living in, from my house back to the town he was living in for his test. And then I took him out of state to live with his ex and his children. He, like I said, drug addicts are very manipulative, very persuasive, charming, but deceitful. He said that he wanted to attend his older children's homecoming and football games. And his older children live in the town where my son seemed to find the most trouble. And I didn't think it was a good idea, even though he was stating he wanted to be there to support his kids. I still didn't think it was a good idea for him to return to that town. However, he did anyway. He left the state that I took him to, returned to back to his old state in his town, and met up with some people. He met up with some of the old people that influenced him so strongly. And I firmly believe that he is back out in the game again. It's a vicious cycle. And what led me to believe that he is back out in the game is because the night of supposedly his child's event that he was going to, he didn't show up for one of them. He called me instead, complaining about a ride. And he also sounded anxious, like he did many times before when I would talk to him during his active use. And I immediately panicked. He told me he had been walking around for hours looking for someone to take him back to his ex's home out of state, because the people that dropped him off for his child's homecoming left him. And he told me he was hungry. He said, he asked me to send him money. Red flag. My heart sunk. When he said that, and I knew he was walking around in the town that he can't seem to stay out of trouble in, My heart sank. And I told him, I'm not sending you a dime. As long as you're in that city, I will not send you a dime. And he immediately got an attitude with me. And that's when I knew for sure. After the 2.5 months that we hung out together, and I basically, took care of him and tried to do whatever I could for him, you're going to get mad at me because I cannot and will not give you money right now to eat. I just don't believe you. So that kicked off a firestorm. My son had a habit of, when he was in active use, he would keep in touch. First of all, he would keep in touch with me a lot. But during his active use, he would vanish. He wouldn't call or contact me for days, weeks, even sometimes months on end. And that's when I would know that he was out there. He kept in touch with me when I took him back home after this hospital stint. He kept in touch with me for roughly 4 days. And then on the 5th day, I texted him and asked simply, "Are you good? Are you okay?" And he didn't respond back. I thought, again, my heart sank. I noticed, I contacted him through Messenger and noticed that he looked at my message but hadn't responded. I just shook my head. I knew. I knew what that meant. I continued to try to reach him. And he was telling me things like, when he finally did respond, he was saying things to me like, "I'm busy right now. I'll get back to you. I'm doing something right now. Um, Give me a minute. I'm almost done." Like, what could you possibly be doing? What could you possibly be doing that you cannot answer the simple question, "Are you okay?" You can answer that question regardless of what you're doing. You could simply say, "Fine, that's all I need to know." But when I got the runaround, I put the whole picture puzzle together and came up with, he's in active use again. I waited until the next day to contact him again, and he finally answered the phone. And he didn't even sound like himself. The person that I had just spent 2.5 months with, he did not sound like that person. He sounded like the addict that would contact me, sometimes in a rage, confusion, bitterness, anger, for nothing, for no reason. He had that attitude, he had that sound in his voice. I was upset. I was very angry. I'm not going to lie. And I did snap at him because I knew, after we just been through all of this with your promises, with you saying that you knew how to handle your own life, and me telling you, "No, you're not ready because I know you better than you know yourself. You need rehab." I begged him to try it my way just this one time. I begged him to try it my way. "Please go to rehab. And he still wanted to do it his way. I even pointed out to him that your way has failed you every single time. Your way has failed you. And that really didn't help either. It seemed as though he thought his way had worked for him in the past. I couldn't get through to him. I could not get through to him. I'm not even sure if rehab could get through to him. I just know that he walked back into his kid's life for 4 days, maintained a somewhat normal life for 4 days, and with one meeting of a person, he was no longer able to control himself. He was like a sheep following along behind a shepherd, but the wrong shepherd. And he was hanging out with friends that he typically would do drugs with. And if you claim that you're not going to be doing drugs anymore, then why are you hanging out with these same people? You are not healed. You are not cured because you don't want to be. People who are addicted have to want the help. I even have a note here from him that he wrote to himself and God, I guess, that talked about how he felt he deserved better and that his kids deserved better, and how he was not ever going to go back to this lifestyle again. I saved that note for him. I stuck it inside of a Bible, hoping that it would get closer to God's ears that way and he could be helped. But like I said, you have to want help. You have to want it. My son is a typical type of addict that he blames every single thing and person around him before he will look in the mirror and blame himself. Just the conversation that we had today, he had already found a way to blame me if he went back to using again. But I know he already had. And he knew it too. And that's why he was looking for a scapegoat, which today was me. He blamed me for returning. He even mentioned something about, you wouldn't even give me any money. I said, you're a grown man. I'm not supposed to. I helped you, but now you're back on your own. It is not up to me. It is not my obligation to support you. And since he was in that attitude of disrespect and deceit, he said, yes, you are supposed to support me. Really? Really? So go ahead. You can blame me if you want then. Your return to the streets somehow was flipped to being my fault that you're there. This is what we go through with people in our lives that are addicted to drugs. I know I'm not the only one. That is why I wanted to put this story out there. The facts, the truth. I'm not one to hide anything. I feel I have nothing to hide. My not speaking out on this before was his wishes, but now that he is actively back out in the street, actively using again, after only 4 days, I see no reason to keep it a secret. I am not going to hide his addiction. So, guys, I know I've talked a lot about myself and my situation with my family member. And I want these podcasts to be interactive. So I'm going to end it here. And I would like for all of you to talk to me. Talk to me. Let me know if you have gone through any type of similar situation. Have you lost a family member from drug addiction and overdose? How did you handle it? What are you doing? What are they doing? Let's talk about this. We'll have more on this subject, but I just felt like it was necessary. I felt it was necessary to talk about. We can't sweep this under the rug. This is my first podcast, and I may have been all over the place with it, but they can only get better from here. This story was on my heart, and I needed to talk about it. I know someone else out there needed to hear it. I've added some links in my description box for help with addiction, help with family members with addiction. I've also added some links to some of my products and also to my Patreon. I appreciate you all for being here today. Thank you for listening. I would ask that anyone who is thinking of judging my situation, my son's situation, me or my son in general, as human beings, I would ask that no, whatever you say will always return back to you tenfold. So don't judge. People are going through things now. Don't judge. We are not the only ones suffering through something like this. And one day, God forbid, it could be you. So refrain from judging. Thank you again for joining me, and I will see you again soon.